Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Big Ten Quick Talk Podcast. If you have not already subscribed to the channel down below, and folks, we have a jam-packed show today. I have the Ohio State Buckeyes season preview queued up, ready to go here for you guys. This is part of my season preview series. I've already done Nebraska and Oregon. On the way are Michigan and Penn State, and in the not-so-distant future, some other teams that we'll get to later, teams like USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, Rutgers, all that jazz. But right now, we're going to be focused on Ohio State, the Buckeyes. And this video will be split into two parts. Excuse me. The first part will be focused on the roster, grade the roster, potential strengths and weaknesses. And the second part will be focused on the schedule. So let's get right into it. Let's get into the roster preview here. We'll start with the offense and make our way to the defense. Then we will attack the potential strengths and weaknesses. So with the offense here, at quarterback, I have a B+. Will Howard does have a ceiling, and Ohio State fans cannot get too high on this guy because he's not an elite quarterback. He's a very solid quarterback, a very solid game manager, and he will win you a ton of games and possibly even the national championship, including the Big Ten and Michigan along the way. But this guy is not an elite quarterback. He's not a Carson Beck. He's not as dynamic as a Shedeur Sanders. But what he has is he's very smart. He's athletic enough to get by. But he doesn't have that elite trait to him, in my opinion. But quarterbacks behind him, like Julian Sayin, does. So that's going to be interesting to see as well, to see if Julian Sayin gets in there as well. But if we're going off the starter and Will Howard, I can't really go higher than a B+. You could argue for an A-, but I just don't see it that way. At running back, I have an A. This is probably the best position group on this team, in my opinion, by a long shot. You had a stud in Travion Henderson, and then you added another stud, possibly one of the best backs in the whole country last year, in Kinshawn Judkins from Ole Miss. And this is where I am starting to draw parallels to 2022 and 2023 Michigan with this Ohio State team. Ohio State's built their roster to now beat Michigan fully. Now, in my opinion, we'll get to that in the defensive side of the category, but this offense will be built through the run game. Will be really run through the run game as well. It's not going to be so pass heavy as it used to be. Now we move to the wide receiver, tight end position. My grade might get a little flack, but I think it is justified because once you go past Emeka Egbuka, you don't have any experience at all. Really. I mean, maybe Carnell Tate caught a pass in the Mizzou game, but there's really no experience in this wide receiver room outside of Emeka Egbuka, who is a stud. I think he'll be a first rounder. He doesn't have the same impact as a player like Marvin Harrison does from last year, but I still think he's very good. But when you look at who else is starting in Carnell Tate and probably Jeremiah Smith or Jaden Ballard from memory there, you really don't have any experience. And however talented these guys can be, they have to be able to go out there on a Saturday against a really good Big Ten defense in which they will face a bunch. As we get to the schedule here in a bit, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to play, and I don't think with all this inexperience they have, I can justify a grade higher than a B. A B does not mean bad. A B is solid. A B is a good room. It's just not an A elite room like their running back room is. And especially there at tight end, too, you have Guy Scott Jr. presumed to start. And again, no experience there really whatsoever. A converted wide receiver. It's just going to be a hole there until that guy can really accumulate himself. So that's what I have for wide receiver and tight end. And at offensive line, you have a B+ offensive line. You have players like Donovan Jackson that are going to be studs. Seth McLaughlin comes in from Alabama. He's going to be great. Josh Fryer at tackle, I think, will be good. But then you have some holes particularly at left tackle with Josh Simmons. I think he'll be good, but I'm just not sold on him yet. And at right tackle with Tajira Tishabula, hopefully I did not butcher that name as bad as I thought I just did, but I think that there's just enough to where I can say, okay, this room isn't elite, but it's going to be pretty darn good at a B plus. On the defense as a whole, this is where I think they will really break through where previous Ohio State teams could not break through. Their defense, in my opinion, could be one of the best in football. I think talent wise, I think it is. But we just have to see it all on the field. But all we can go through right now with this defense is what we're looking at. At the defensive line, I have an A. On the defensive line, you have players like Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau on the edges. That's going to be a deadly pass rush. Probably one of the best in all of college football, in my opinion. It's going to be hard to name any other defensive end duo that's going to be better than Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. And when you move to the interior, it's arguably just as good with players like Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton at defensive tackle and nose tackle. I think that those players will be great against the run as well, especially Tyleik Williams, who is a really, really good player. Now you move to this linebacker room. I gave it an A minus. I was really debating between an A minus and a B plus. And this room has some studs in it. When you look at players like CJ Hicks, Cody Simon, I mean, these two guys are lethal and they are just athletes that can go all over the field. Tommy Eichenberg last year, he was good, but I think that he was pretty overrated when he was at Ohio State. He didn't have the athleticism, in my opinion, to be elite, which is why he slid in the NFL draft. But I can see a guy like CJ Hicks who has that athleticism to be a first round, second round pick because he displays that athleticism, and that's what Ohio State exactly needs. And in the secondary, I think the secondary is going to be really good as well. You have players like Denzel Burke, Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs, Jordan Hancock. I mean, all these players are bona fide studs. You put them on any defense in the world, they are going to be starting. Maybe you could argue Jordan Hancock, yes or no, but if you put Caleb Downs on any roster in the world at the college level, he is going to start and thrive. Same with Lathan Ransom, same with Denzel Burke, in my opinion. Those guys are all studs, in my opinion. So that is what I have for the grading. When now you look at potential strengths, the running back room. Obviously, I think the running back room is going to carry this offense to potentially a national championship and possibly beating Michigan. The secondary, in my opinion, like we just said, full of studs, a room full of studs, and they're going to be able to lock down many receiver groups, which is why I am confident if they face down against a high-powered offense from the SEC, like an Ole Miss or a Mizzou, in the playoffs at some point, that I would be confident in their secondary to lock them down. And the defensive line. The defensive line is lethal. It is. It is an absolute stud of a unit. You can't pick out one guy that's elite. There's no Chase Young on this roster, but there's like 4 mini versions of Chase Young on this roster, just talent-wise, at the 4 down lineman positions. Going to potential weaknesses, wide receiver and tight end. I think that we've chronicled that enough. I just don't see the experience there outside of Emeka Ibuka, who will be really good. Don't get me wrong. He will be good. But there's just not a whole lot of experience there that I can work with to accurately grade these guys, however talented they may be. Quarterback, like we said, he has a ceiling. Will Howard, he has a ceiling. And he's not going to be this stud that everyone makes him out to be, but he's not going to be some bum either. He's going to be a really capable starting quarterback. One more word of caution on him. Avery Johnson, the starting quarterback at Kansas State, did beat him out toward this end of the season, which is why he ended up transferring. And my last potential weakness, parts of the unproven offensive line. I largely think that this is mostly potential and not really a weakness, just because the other offensive linemen around these guys are going to help prod them up and make them look better than they actually are. And this offense will make those offensive linemen look a lot better than they are and maybe hide their weaknesses. But anyway, these are my thoughts on the Ohio State roster. Comment down below your thoughts on my grading. And now we move to the Ohio State schedule breakdown. Notice this is a breakdown, not a prediction. There's a difference. My prediction videos will be dropping in August, hopefully, or late July, somewhere around that time frame. Like I said earlier, this breakdown, here's how it's going to go if you're new to the series. Teams that I will color in orange. I think Ohio State has a 0 to 30% chance of winning. Teams that will remain in black by the end of the breakdown, pick 'em games. Likewise, purple 60 to 80%, then light blue certified win. So let's move on here to the certified win category, since there is no game that I think Ohio State will be in the orange, the 0 to 30% chance of winning. Versus Toledo, versus Western Michigan, versus Marshall, versus Purdue, and versus Indiana, I think are all certified wins. The three to start out the year, understandable. And then versus Purdue, I don't think Purdue is going to be very good at all this year. Same with Indiana, both building programs that I think will be better in the future, but not this year. Moving to the purple shaded teams, this side of the bracket, I think Ohio State has a 60 to 80% chance of winning, which means probably anywhere between a 10 to 28 point victory for Ohio State. We have at Michigan State versus Iowa, versus Nebraska, versus Purdue, and at Northwestern. These games at Michigan State, this will be a tougher game. I think Michigan State's going to be better than a lot of people give them credit for in year one. Yes, they did get gutted, but they have a quarterback in Aiden Childs that I really do like, and that gives them a chance in this game. Not a chance enough, though, as I think Ohio State will probably win that one with ease. Versus Iowa, Iowa's defense is going to give them problems. Iowa's defense gives everyone problems, but Iowa will not be able to move the ball on Ohio State's defense. And it'll be a game of field position in the first quarter, and then beyond will just be Ohio State's game. Versus Nebraska, this game might be entertaining, but I don't see Nebraska hanging with Ohio State for longer than the third quarter. Versus Purdue and at Northwestern, teams that I don't think are going to be very good, but might give Ohio State a hard time. And so by process of elimination, you have found that at Oregon, at Penn State, and versus Michigan are my pick'em games. Games that I haven't decided on yet, whether Ohio State will win or lose, which is why I have the projected win total at 10 to 12 games for Ohio State. They definitely could go undefeated, but they definitely could go 10-2. That is definitely possible. I will give you my official record prediction later in the summer. But for now, just know that I think at Oregon will probably be the toughest game that Ohio State plays on this schedule, especially it being in Oregon at Austin. I think that game does not bode well for Ohio State, but Ohio State could certainly win that game. At Penn State, if that's a whiteout game, that game gets really interesting. And versus Michigan, the old rivalry here. The game, I think that Ohio State has a much better chance in this game than they did last year and in years prior as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe. Subscribing, the best thing you can do to support the podcast as we keep growing. And there will be more in this series of season previews coming out. I think Penn State and Michigan are on their way to be dropping this week to next weekend. And I will see you guys in the next one.